We started the book of Numbers last week, and you saw how it got its name. It began with a census. But this week and next, we get some really juicy stories. To keep this brief, I'll simply call your attention to them. If you want to talk more about them, give me a call or bring it up at our Wednesday evening class. Numbers 6 concludes with that lovely blessing that I often use in worship, the blessing of Aaron. Now you know where it comes from. Numbers 11 includes a story that I often use when orienting new elders and deacons to their tasks, the appointment of the 70 elders in response to the people's demand for meat. I guess manna is fine, but even that can become boring. I have always loved the idea of Eldad and Medad prophesying outside the meeting. They should have been at the meeting, but even though they weren't there, they got the spirit of prophecy. Moses, rather than being upset about it, simply said he wished that all God's people were prophets. Now that I think about it, this week's reading has a few stories about people bucking the established authority. Right after Eldad and Medad prophesy in the wrong place, Moses' brother and sister, Aaron and Miriam, decide they've had enough of their brother lording it over them, and they protest that they too have something to say about God. Moses doesn't seem to mind, but God gets incensed that they would speak against Moses, and so God tells them off. And then, just to underline the point, God gives Miriam a skin disease. This part of the story, incidentally, has always bothered me. God punishes Miriam and Aaron by making Miriam sick. Just Miriam. Well, Aaron is upset on her behalf, but still. Well, a climax to the story is reached this week. They get to the promised land, and the spies tell them that the land is every bit as good as God had promised, but the people are afraid to invade and they turn away. Well, you'll read this on Thursday. Soon after that, there's another rebellion against Moses, someone else who thinks he knows just as much about God. And who does Moses think he is anyway? Well, you'll see when you read it what happens to Korah, Datan, and Abiram. More than one pastor has wished for a repeat performance when people start getting in their face. Finally, on Sunday are two stories that are echoed in the New Testament. One is the story of the water from the rock at Meribah. The story may sound familiar to you. Here, it happens at Kadesh, but earlier in Exodus chapter 17, the same thing happened in a different location. Did the same thing happen twice? Actually, an old tradition developed that everywhere the people went, there was a rock of Meribah from which they got water. And so Paul refers to that in one of his letters when he writes, "They drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ." And then the other story on Sunday is when God commands Moses to make a bronze serpent and put it on a pole so that people would look at it and recover from a venomous bite. Jesus refers to this story when he says, "Just as Moses lifted the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life." The serpent was lifted on a pole. Jesus was lifted on a cross. You see how much you're learning about the New Testament by reading the Old Testament?